Welcome to Wasabi Interviews. My name is Antonio Vega, and on Wasabi Interviews, we like to talk to interesting people in Hawaii, Japan, and beyond. And today, I'm joined by photographer Shane Sato, who this photo from the issue, the October-November 2019 issue, is his work. He's done some amazing work with the Go for Broke 442 vets and the 100th Battalion vets. Shane Sato.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hey.
Good,
hey. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, you're coming to us from the LA area, is that correct?
Yes, downtown LA with lots of parking right now with my lockdown hairdo. So I haven't cut my hair in 2 months, but
I know, me either.
But yeah, it's amazing to see empty streets and parking and things. It's crazy right now. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, same here in Hawaii. It's plenty of parking, not too many cars outside. Nice weather.
Yeah, I see Waikiki. It's like empty and no one's walking around. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. But you grew up in Maui, is that correct?
No, I actually grew up in Los Angeles, but my dad and his side of the family grew up in Maui and Oahu.
Okay.
My dad eventually came over here to the mainland, and that's where he resided for the rest of his life.
Cool.
So I still have family in Maui and Oahu.
Oh, okay. When's the last time you stopped by?
I was there last year.
Okay.
Yeah, in probably the beginning of the year. But I go there once a year. I'm still hopefully planning to come out to Maui again and Oahu at the end of this year, around October. We are planning to have a book talk if we're still allowed to have those at that time, and hopefully everything will calm down and it'll be okay.
Yeah. So just for anybody that's unaware, and the story that we did on Shane, interviewed by Sean Ibara, our feature story in that issue, is Shane did a photo portrait book called The Go for Broke Spirit. There's 2 volumes. Do you have any of them on hand by any chance?
I have the first one here.
Yeah.
This is the one that we completed first.
Right.
And then the second one I have right here. And this one we just completed the end of this year, last year. And this book here just, came in time after or during the China tariffs. We were really wondering if it was going to make it here on time. And now I'm glad I had it done because I could have been stuck in China.
Oh, yeah.
Or who knows. Been on it. We just had them shipped right around the holidays. So I was there, I think, in China in September, working with them over there. And yeah, who knew a few months later, right? So
yeah. No, right on time. You managed to get under the wire.
So as you can see behind me, I have a living room full of books. So we were supposed to be working and shipping them out, and everything's at a standstill right now. But I have a nice pile behind me to all the kids can play, make things and stuff. So yeah.
All right, so let's I want to talk about the book because the story of you like getting these portraits of these World War II veterans is very fun, and like I said, we cover it a little bit in the story. But before that, so how did you get into photography then? Was that always something you wanted to do, or did that just come out of left field? Like how did that happen?
I think growing up, I always liked movies, and so when I would go. I guess when I was going to college, I really wanted to get into the media arts. So I started doing film. So a lot of film. I was a cameraman, things like that. I was trying to do video. And everyone always asked me, hey, can you take my picture? Can you do this? Can you take some stills? Because I had my camera. Back then it was film, and not everyone had film cameras. Now everyone has cameras, but back then it was much more difficult. So I would be taking pictures on set and working with them. And then that kind of went on to when I was working with different celebrities in Hollywood and different publicity companies and studios. So I would do events, I would do their publicity junkets, and so that's basically how I started doing photography here in Hollywood, in the media, film, television realm. Yeah.
Cool. So, okay, so you're doing, some commercial photography. At what point does this Go for Broke project come into play? Because this is, a personal thing that you decided to do yourself. How did that come about?
Well, I'm always interested in working with other Asian people, I guess, not just Japanese, but everyone of Asian descent, because I always felt that working in these media arts in Hollywood, we were always underrepresented. Either the bad guy, the gangsters,
right.
The immigrant, dry cleaner. So I wanted to show Asians in a strong light. So I believe the mid 90s, I had my first series I put together in black and white film. And this was a series on Asian American actors. And then so that was shown around in Los Angeles for a little bit. And that really was a different feeling for the Asians in the portrait sense, because most of the time they would be in this character and not really represented in a strong or beautiful or powerful way. It was always, so I really tried to show strength and beauty in Asians. And so that series was kind of the start of me working with the arts with Asian people. Now, someone saw these prints from Go for Broke, and when they saw these prints, they thought, wow, why can't you work with some of the veterans? And so we did a collaboration at that time. I believe it was around 1999.
Oh.
I worked photographing some of the veterans in this area, Los Angeles area, Seattle, and in Hawaii. So 1999 to 2000, I traveled to those three areas, and that is the black and white series that you see here. So all the black and white photos in the books are all from that first series.
Oh, okay.
And it was, funny story, it was really difficult because they all wanted to wear their white Go for Broke shirts. And anyone who knows photography, white is a photographer's nightmare. It's really hard. It reflects. It's really hard to change because everyone's just going to look at this white shirt. So that's why when I photographed it, I photographed them against white. So then your eyes are going to focus on the person instead of the white shirt. And so for that series, everyone was done the same way because they wanted to be shot or photographed within a unity. So that was that was kind of that concept. Yeah.
So just in case, I mean, I think the average Wasabi reader and viewer of these is aware what the 442 is, the 100th Battalion, these Japanese American World War II veterans. I think they're aware, but just in case, right? So in World War II, of course, they were this group of volunteers, right? The Varsity Victory Volunteers, right? And then that would, they were kicked out. Originally, they were part of the Territorial Guard, correct? And then they got kicked out of the military, of the U.S. military, but they still wanted to contribute to the war effort. So they create this group of volunteers, which eventually would lead to the creation of this primarily Japanese American military unit, correct?
Yes, and that's what you're talking about. It's the 100th Battalion, and the 100th Battalion, they were the first, originated in Hawaii. And that's a lot of people from the mainland always think, oh, it's the 442, You know, you say that to anyone in Hawaii, they know it's the 100th. They were the first, and they were the
Right.
ones who first came over. There wouldn't have been the 442nd unless there was the 100th.
Right.
My uncles actually fought in the 100th.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so yes, that's basically how that started, and the original men were first shipped off to Italy, I believe, and that was where they first landed and created a name for themselves.
Right. Yeah. 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 So, you know, they fought very valiantly over there, and you know, many did not come back. But for the ones that did, by the time that you started this project, I guess what this was in the late '90s, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that was they were already in like they're starting to get around the 70 years old, right?
Or older. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there were a few young ones, but most of them were already in 70s, early 80s by that time.
Right, right. And so you do this first project, like you said, with the white shirts, but eventually, you know, a lot of the photos that you end up taking are with like uniforms on, right? Like what sparked that change? How did you get that idea, and how did that go? How was it received by the veterans? Did they like say, yeah, let's do it, or what happened?
Well, originally, this first series, I showed around a little bit. There was, I would say, maybe 60 portraits in total.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first of its kind when I finished that. Few years later, maybe 2005 or so, starting to work more in digital. And I decided that I wanted to continue this project because I really felt it should be done. I didn't know. I know I didn't want to shoot again in white shirts. That was
Right,
not. That
right.
was not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do is photograph them in their own shirts.
Yeah.
So I took a couple volunteers, Toki Yoshihashi and To Yoshino. I still remember them. They walked all the way from the Go for Broke Monument over to my studio, which is about half a mile. But you know, they're tough guys, so there's no problem then. But photographed them in their own shirts, maybe members only jacket, I'm not sure. And went in and I showed these photos around to different people.
Yeah.
And they go, oh well, that's you know, a cute senior citizen. That's a nice man. You know, whose grandfather is that? And you know, they liked the photos, but it wasn't the reaction that I want to try and get.
Yeah, it doesn't get the message across, right? You without the context, you just don't know. Like, okay, who is this guy, right?
Right. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
So I remember that my other friends were reenactors, and they had the parades over here, and they let me borrow some of their uniforms. So next, I thought, oh, let's try and put these guys in their uniforms. So I asked the same guys, Toke and Toe, to come out and take photos again. And you know, these guys are a little bit, how would you say, they're willing to do it for me. So they were nice enough, and they put on some. This time it was just the shirts, I believe. And I took some of these photos, and then I showed them around, and people go, oh, you know, are these guys the ones from, you know, World War II or the 442? And there's a little bit more thought process going on, and that's exactly what I wanted. But they didn't know who they were. They didn't know a lot about the 442, and they really didn't understand. So I knew that it was something that I would really want to continue with shooting these more photos.
Okay. So, all right. So you have this idea, and you think, okay, I got something I can work with here, but now you have to track down veterans, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how did that go?
Yeah, that was really tough. First of all, a lot of people didn't really know who I was, you know, just from the first project. So, and I wanted to try and go to different areas.
Sure.
So even in Hawaii, I would go out there and try and photograph some of the men at the 100th Club, at the 442nd Club, and I would be introduced by the ladies, usually ladies who ran the place. And I would sit there during the time they would get together for wine club or a meeting or something like that. And I would ask them at that time. I thought it'd be like, oh yeah, that's great. Let's do this. And I would be able to photograph 10 guys each time. But most of the time it was, you know, who are you, or no, or you know, why are you doing this? And it was not as easy as I thought.
Right.
So I actually went back and photographed some of the men from the first series, because they already knew who I was and what I was going to do. And so I re-photographed some of them, and they're the ones who originally started introducing me to some of the other veterans there.
Right.
You know, fast forward many years later, the best way that I found to photograph the veterans is there's always one lady.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a lady that they will always listen to.
Okay.
And whatever this lady says, they will do. So in Hawaii, this person was Stacey Hayashi.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I interviewed Stacey.
So she does movies and this and that. But you know, back then she was always hanging out at the clubhouse, and so Stacey and I were friends, and she helped me out. And basically, when she asked the veterans to come, they would do it. You know,
Yeah.
I could ask 100 times, in no way. But she asked once, okay. And so that's kind of how I did. So I kind of thought, so everywhere I went, I tried to find out who this lady was. In Seattle, they had a person named Debbie Cascino. Here, there's always somebody. And that's kind of, you know, a way for me to kind of break the ice, get to know the people. And that's how I got most of the men to participate.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough, right? It's like, okay, who are you? Like, what do you want? Like, you know, you just, I mean, that's just our natural tendency. It's like, why do you want to take a picture of me, right?
Yeah, and you know, then it was trying to get the uniforms. And when I first started, there was only, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 uniforms that I had. And most of these guys are all different sizes. Back then, they were all like 5'7" and 112 pounds. Well, those sizes are all different.
Yeah.
You know,
they're a bit bigger in the belly, and
you know, some are a little shorter. And so we had to do a lot of pinning, and probably if you look closely in the photos, which I hope you don't, that you'll be able to see that it's the same uniforms. We had to pin, we had to use Photoshop, this and that, but they're really meant for photographic impact. I did not, you know, it would have been way too hard. Oh, this guy was this particular sergeant or something, for me to get that exact uniform for them. Some of these guys had their uniforms from back in the day, and they actually were able to fit in them. Most if we were lucky for them to have their uniforms, I would say like 50% could not fit in anymore. But we were lucky with a few that actually had their own uniforms and fit into it. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's something. And when I say it was hard in the beginning, I also want to state that the more I photographed and when they saw the first book, and then as the veterans got older, it got much easier. So it could be their, you know, mortality, or maybe seeing the grandkids running around, but much, you know, when these guys started hitting their 90s, I think it was much easier for me. Once I asked them, they would be much more willing to participate. And it was a complete change from when I first started in the early 2000s. So, yeah.
Like I remember Sean put in the article that there is a part where you're trying to get more photos after the first book came out, and so then you show them the first book and you go like, why didn't you tell me this is what you wanted to do? Like, I didn't know it'd be good, right?
Yeah, this was actually in Hawaii, and so the first book had just come out, and I just did a Kickstarter, and that was successful. So we were able to get funds to try and photograph for the second book. So one of the places that I went to was Hawaii, and I presented some of the first book to some of the veterans at the clubhouse as their gift. And one of the veterans there goes, "Hey, how come I'm not in this book?" And the lady who works there and set everything up, she said, "You know, he asked you many times to be in it. You kept saying no." And he goes, "Well, I didn't know it was going to be good." So unfortunately, I was not. I can't remember if I photographed that man or not, but yeah, it was definitely a funny story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it's always easier once you have it, right? But then the problem is getting started. That's when
Yeah.
so in LA, you obviously have your studio. I assume you might have taken some photos there, but when you're on the road like that, like how do you do that? Where do you take those photos?
Well, I have a portable studio that I use, and I use a lot of natural light when I can. So I kind of make do with the area that I'm working with, and luckily with Photoshop, I can kind of manipulate the photos so the lighting and everything kind of looks the same. So the studio light and the natural light, I try and intermix it so it kind of looks the same to get that look that I'm going for. But yeah, I can, as long as I have some kind of a backdrop, or even if I don't, I cut out men and things like that. It's definitely a lot of work, but when I have to, I can do it. But here at the studio, which you can't see behind me, it's a fairly large studio space, and I did a lot of the shoots right in here.
Okay. So was the idea to always turn these portraits into a book, or what were you thinking at first?
No, it was definitely not a book. It was really supposed to be a series that people could look at and hopefully remember. I didn't even know at first what I was going to do.
Yeah.
I just felt inside that it really needed to be done, and I thought that I would be a good person to do it. So right now, I'm lucky. I'm happy to say that I probably have over 200 portraits. Only 160 are in the book, but I probably have close to 200 portraits that I've taken throughout the years.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's the most anyone has or will have. But yeah, I'll tell you another funny story.
Yeah.
So I went down to San Diego to photograph 3 of the veterans, and they're all sitting in the kitchen and with the wives and stuff and expecting us. And when we arrived, they go, I said, "Okay, I'm going to look around for a place for us to shoot." And they go, "Oh, okay. These flowers back here are really nice, or this area of our garden looks really really pretty." And I go, "No, how about this garage?" And this lady had a look of horror on her face because the garage was just packed full of stuff, all their junk and everything. But the lighting was good, and so that's all I really need is a good lighting. So I set up my backdrop there inside the garage with the soft lighting, and it turned out great. But yeah, I think in her mind, she probably thought that I was going to photograph her husband with storage containers and all her laundry material back there.
Yeah. It's interesting how, you think like photography, okay, you have to get the perfect shot, and of course lighting is important, but a big part of it is also trust, right? You have to have people trust you in order to be able to do what you do.
Yes, and that's a good point. There's a lot. I always say there's a lot of people that can take photos, but there's not a lot of people that can make photos.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you have to be able to work with the person. You have to be able to get that emotion or the look that you're trying to get out of somebody. And I see a lot of these new photographers. They just okay, do something, and
do something.
Unless you're a professional, they don't. Most of these men will just stand there at attention. They won't move. And you really have to kind of talk to them, coax them, and all that's a good thing that you asked that, because a lot of people have been asking me that same thing. And not that I expect everyone to go and take pictures of their family, but I am going to be kind of sharing tips on my website and as well as on our Instagram and Facebook, kind of showing some tips and some of the things that worked for me that can maybe help someone maybe photograph their own family or do an interview, or possibly, you know, any kind of any kind of thing they want to do with a smartphone now. It's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that working with celebrities and in Hollywood, which they don't give you any time at all. A lot of times, some of the veterans, the same thing. They didn't give me any time at all. This when I still remember this man that we photographed in Seattle, and he got in there and he said he was tricked, and so he was really mad. I'm tricked.
Wow.
Why am I here? You know, get me out of here. You know, and so he's grumbling when we're trying to take his photo, and he's just sitting there like this, going, "Get me out of here! Get me out of here!" and you know, I'm trying to work with another person, and then, you know, the lady, another lady that's working, putting the clothes on over here, she comes running over to me and says, Shane, got to get to this guy fast. He's going to walk out. And I'm like, oh no. And, you know, and by the way, this is not the first time this has happened. So I run over there and start talking to him, and you just try and find some commonality, or trying to make them understand that they are important, that they should be there, that I want to take their photograph. And hopefully they will be, this is something important that they'll look back on too. And so sometimes, let's say shooting a celebrity in Hollywood, they only give you 10, 15 minutes, if that. That's the same thing here. That sometimes these guys will only give you 10, 15 minutes. And it's not the case with everyone. Some people they love the camera. They'll stand out there and they'll do anything. But, you know, it's the hard ones that you remember. And it's those times where you have to kind of think of something quick and to try and get that shot that you want. I have many more stories about each one of these guys. Photographs. So, you know, I will be sharing those on some of my Facebook pages as well.
Great. So just before people forget, so where should they go? What's your website, and what are the social media handles that people should be aware of? I will include links, of course, in the description and all that. But
yes, the main link is the goforBrokeSpirit.com.
Yeah,
and that is the website. From there, we have our Instagram, Instagram and Facebook, which are very similar, so I don't want to mess it up right now, but you can take a look at the link. But hopefully you can subscribe and take a look at some of these, I don't know if I call them tips or pointers, but some suggestions that work for us. You know, we were lucky, or I was lucky, I guess, that a lot of people came up to me and thanked me and said that from this they were able to they talked to some of their dad, or they were able to one was able to get a little oral history before he passed away. Other people learned a little bit more about their family inside the book, which they didn't even know about. So all these little things that people have come talk to me about, and it's interesting. But, you know, when we're at these events or talking, it's so busy. So and I can't talk to everyone. So this is kind of something where I can get a little bit more personal with someone and share their story, that maybe it'll inspire somebody else too, and down the line.
Yeah, you know, like even, you know, running this story, right? And of course we sold some of the books as well, but, you know, when I would talk to people on the phone and, you know, or through email, you know, it was always like, you know, my dad served, or, you know, my uncle served, or, you know, so many people here in Hawaii have that personal connection, and, you know, they always reach out, you know, to us when we run a story related to this topic, and it's always just, you know, really heartwarming to hear, you know, people really, you know, they still feel that connection, and they still, you know, feel that gratitude to what these veterans did, right?
Yeah, and that's great. And a lot of these stories, because this book is mainly about stories, it's the books. They're not meant to be really historical, even though there is a lot of history in it, but they're meant to be personal stories. So it could be a story that, you know, their dad passed down to them, and they want to share it with you or with me. And it's something that I want to put on the website or share it if they allow me to, and then let other people join in and hear these stories. Because as you know, these nisei men didn't go around and talk about all this stuff. They never told these stories. And so it'd be a great place to have something where they can share these stories and hear all these unique, I'm sure, amazing stories throughout the years that probably no one's ever heard of.
Yeah. It's so, I think, aside from the fact that, it's a difficult thing to have experienced, to have gone to war, many people don't talk about it, but it's also for the family like a difficult thing to ask, right? It's like,
Yes.
Grandpa, tell me about this thing that you did. But when somebody else comes into the picture, a third party, and they're able to get those stories out, I think we all win, right? Like people, society as a whole, we get to learn about this experience, but the person's family also, they get to learn about, what their family did. So, yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely true. I couldn't talk to my dad at all, really, and I was just talking about my mom. The only thing that we could ever talk about was the Dodgers. We had nothing in common. So at the dinner table, we'd talk about who's pitching tonight. I mean, it's just, I hope things are a little easier with the next generation, but for me being a sansei and from what I hear from other sanseis, it was not that easy.
Right. So, okay, so both books are out, and people can pick them up via the website, correct?
Yes, right now, because all our events have been postponed. There's a few copies in Hawaii, I believe, at the Pearl Harbor Museum and at the Hawaii JCCC. That's the only two places I know. Oh, and the Army Museum in Waikiki. But at the last time I heard that some of them were running out, and I would imagine everyone's closed right now. But if people want them, they can always order on the website, and I can ship it to whoever you want. And they can mention Wasabi, and if they want me to sign the book for them, I'd be happy to do that too.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that's the goforbrokespirit.com?
Yes, the goforbrokespirit.com.
Right. Yeah. Volume 1, Volume 2. Volume 2 came out at the end of 2019. So I know a lot of our readers did get Volume 1, but Volume 2 is out now too. So you can go to the goforbrokespirit.com. I will include all those links in the description, all that stuff down below. So Shane, thank you so much for talking. It was a pleasure to actually get to talk to you kind of face to face. We always talk over email or the phone or So thank you so much. And please remember to subscribe and go follow Shane and the Go for Broke Spirit and all that too as well. Links down below. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Antonio. Thanks, everyone.